Welcome to Application, the TYPO3 community podcast.
1, 2, 1, 2.
I'm Jeffrey McGuire. Most people call me Jam. And this is where we celebrate the TYPO3 community, sharing your stories, talking about your projects and the difference you make in, around, and with TYPO3 CMS. This is indeed Application, the TYPO3 community podcast. My guest today is Tomas Norre Mikkelsen. You can call him Tomas Norre, you can call him Tomas Mikkelsen, you can probably even call him Tomas Norre Mikkelsen, just don't call him late for his golf game. Tomas and I talked about a lot of things today, including the fact that Tomas has used TYPO3 every day of his life since 2004, his difficulty in deciding what his favorite feature might be and if that's even important. We talk about his professional life, his open source life, maintaining the TYPO3 Crawler extension, and he has a nice metaphor for that, saying, I didn't give birth to the child, but I am nurturing it now. There's a nice bit about refactoring, talking about the advantage of smaller code bases supporting innovation, and we do touch a little bit on European weather, bicycling, golf, and what would a 2020 podcast be without some pandemic and lockdown humor. I hope you enjoy this episode.
You have the window open for proper COVID ventilation? I was wondering, because you're wearing a scarf.
I'm easily cold, so I'm more that kind of person.
Huh.
So it's better safe.
Are you really Danish?
Yeah, I'm originally from Denmark. Yeah, that's correct.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Of course, this I would not call it a new situation anymore, but the situation with the remote is, of course, changed a lot. But for me personally, it's for the better, because I have been actually dreamt about doing remote for quite a while. So it's a good test for me to see if it actually is something that fits me. And I must say that it suits me quite well.
Yeah.
Even though I only have to travel 11 kilometers to get to the office, it still costs me 2 hours a day. Yeah. And that's How do you usually travel that, or how did you used to travel that? With the train. So I went to the train station with bike, and then to the train, but every time you have a small buffer, it costs time. So ideally, I could do it from door to door in 50 minutes when I use the public transportations. If I go by car, in best case, I could do it in 25, but worst case is over an hour. And by bike, I could do it in probably 45 minutes. So it's in that range.
Right. So 45 minutes of 90 minutes of biking every day is incredibly healthy, but if you're susceptible to getting cold, it's suboptimal in the winter time, eh?
Yeah, but that's not the reason. I just find it annoying, so to speak, to shower 2 times a day. The facilities in the office are there. We have great showers. We have a big parking area for our bikes. Everything is actually possible. But yeah, so far I haven't done it that much. I have done it, but not that much. And right now I choose to do it like that I have 1 hour extra for sleep and 1 hour extra for sport.
Nice.
So it's a win for me.
It sounds like a good combination. I've been working remote effectively since before there was a word for it. I've been working remote since 2000. And I used to get when I was working in the film industry, I would get video cassettes and scripts delivered and floppy disks delivered by a courier, and then I would do the work I had to do on them, and then I would call the courier and they would come and pick them up.
I see. So that was back then when freelancing was really freelancing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
So this all kind of fits perfectly, though. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do professionally?
Yeah, I don't know what to say about myself, but I will give it a go. my name, Thomas, you know that already. And I am originally from Denmark. We established that too. I'm 40 years old, so it gives me a little experience. I have been working professionally as a software developer since 2004. So that's also the time where I started with TYPO3. So I'm one of the older guys, so to speak. But still, I sometimes feels lacking of there's really expert level, so to speak, because the task you do is not consistently the same challenging. And if you not constantly get challenged, you don't get developed as a person, as a developer, the same way as you would if you always get challenged. I have had some really challenging tasks and etc. But sometimes you feel like you're just standing still and not developing yourself. So from the year perspective, if you look at it like that, I should be a kick-ass developer. I think I am in some cases too. But yeah, it still feels like something is missing. But I think it's the classic imposter syndrome that you're.
It's very common in our industry.
Yeah.
And when you have a, you know, whatever you want to call it, when you have a large software package like TYPO3, there are very few people who can know everything about it, and everyone has some specialties, right? So sure. I know that you've got some particular things that you focused on over the years, and then there are easily going to be places that you don't know so much about that you could figure out if you had to, probably.
Most likely, I would expect that. And not least important, I would know whom to ask.
Right, and that's when we can talk about open source community being so valuable.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Besides from that, professionally, I do PHP development logically because I do TYPO3. I'm into DevOps and continuous integration and delivery. So to automate things, because I'm a lazy developer. I did a talk some years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and I had a slide that even though I run marathons, I consider myself lazy. And people were just like, how can that be? How can you compare these two things? You cannot be lazy and run a marathon at the same time. But things I should do more than once, I try to automate.
So how do you automate the marathon?
That I haven't succeeded yet. But yeah.
There's of course, because we're talking about technology, there's an XKCD comic about the number of times you need to do something versus the amount of time it takes to do it versus the amount of time it takes to automate it, and whether it's worth doing or not, and how much of your life it eats.
Yeah, I've seen that too, I think. But yeah, that's a good point. But I tend to do it probably too fast sometimes. Automate too fast, because I'm really annoyed when I have to do it too often.
Sure.
But yeah.
That's actually a really healthy trait. And DevOps is kind of an expression of that as a cultural tendency in among developers, right? And the automation, frankly, removes human error. As long as the things that you automate are automated the right way, then it's actually safer, right? And the pitch that we always give people is, now you can get on with the interesting parts of your job instead of the parts that you risk screwing up because you're bored.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's also part of my philosophy, because I want to do new stuff. I don't want to do the same stuff I know already how to do.
Yeah. What's your job and your job title, and what do you do on a daily basis?
My job title is developer. We don't have titles in our companies. We have roles. So I'm a developer.
What company is that?
I am by AOE GAMBH. What's it called?
AOE.
Yeah, exactly. I just have to mention the last part of the company, then I switch automatically to German, even though I'm not German, but yeah. Okay. But I'm at AOE since 2013 because they asked me to, and then I joined. It was actually that simple. I do TYPO3 development 90% of my time. Mostly the last 3 years, I do updates, type-free updates. I'm on a pretty big client of ours, which have a type-free instance that needs a lot of maintenance. So I don't do much features, I do more maintenance. So making sure that it's compatible with the next version and the next version and the next version so that we can update. So I'm not really getting into new features and stuff like that. So that's also one of the reasons why I say that sometimes I feel like I'm not using my potential completely. I'm not getting these challenging tasks, because replacing class A with class B, a lot of people can do, but it's something we can automate, and it's something we are trying to improve so that we can do it better and faster and make room for other tasks.
Right, and the more systematic and the more consistent your teams are with which extensions they use and how they're configured, the easier it is for the whole company to do a better job for the clients over time, right? Because then eventually you can automate how you used this and how you built that, and if you've implemented it on 10 projects, right?
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, we don't have that many type-free projects anymore, but we still have a few pretty big ones. So yeah.
How long have you been in Germany?
Since 2013. I moved to Germany to join AOE back then. And it's actually quite a fun story, because I started working for the type-free community actively around 2012, end 2012, and then there was a code sprint in 2013. And roughly at the same time, I saw online on Twitter that AOE was looking for employees. So I replied, how do you feel about foreign employees that don't speak German? No problem. If your English is good, which I consider, then you can join us, or you can apply at least. Then I did, and they asked me for a code test, like a lot of companies do when they hire new people they don't know that well. And I handled in the code, and I got feedback, and yeah, they would like me to do changes. And I wrote them, hey, sorry, I can't do that right now. I'm on a way to a code sprint, but I'll take care of it when I get back home. And then I realized I was on my way to AOE for a code sprint. So in the evening, the first day I was in the office of AOE, I got an email from their CEO, Kian. He was back then in San Francisco to build up the San Francisco office. And I got the email from him, just to let you know, we want to offer you the job. We just want to see how fast you could adapt the changes. And that email I got as sitting in the AOE office. And then the next day I had my short interview with their CTO and another developer. And yeah, then 3 months later, I started working for AOE.
Nice. And so if being remote works out for you, are you going to move back to Denmark, or are you going to stay in Germany?
That's still up for discussion with my girlfriend. No, I really miss Denmark once in a while. I really like the nature. In Denmark, you can basically not live there without being close to the sea, and that I really love, to be honest.
Sure, and you're in Mainz right now, which is pretty far away from the ocean.
Correct. We talked about it yesterday in our daily, and I think we estimated roughly 450 kilometers to the coast left of Amsterdam. That's the shortest distance I can get to the sea, I think. But we're not completely sure, but that's in around that numbers. And in Denmark, you cannot be more than 50 kilometers from the sea, regardless where you are.
Right, so, exactly.
So of course, it's something we talk about. My girlfriend is just not really into. She don't know job-wise and etc. She's a banker, and of course the systems are different. She speaks Danish, but she's German. So yeah, that's still something we talk about once in a while.
That Frankfurt area is probably a better place for bankers overall. There's a lot of banks there, eh?
Correct.
Yeah. So you said you picked up TYPO3 in 2004, right?
Correct.
What version did you first touch?
That must be around 3.4, 3.6. something like that. So it's a few versions back then.
How did you encounter it? How did it come into your life, or how did you come into its life?
That's actually also a fun story, if I may say myself. It started with a Joomla project.
Okay.
The client contacted us. I was self-employed back then. The client contacted me and asked for a Joomla project. And I had no experience with Joomla, TYPO3 or whatsoever, but I couldn't really get my head around Joomla back then. And then I looked for alternatives and see if I could pitch that as a project for the client instead. And I ended up selling them a TYPO3 solution instead. So my very first TYPO3 solution I sold was for 15,000 euros. And I had zero experience back then, but I still managed to sell it. Because I sort of felt like I was on my right spot quite fast.
So what convinced you to offer them TYPO3?
It's a few years ago, so I might not be really on that edge anymore, what it is. But I found the possibilities on how to extend the system was good, because they had, of course, a lot of basic CMS that every CMS system could handle. Yep. But I found the extensibility over the extensions easier in there than in Joomla back then.
Right. In my experience, the style of Joomla, at least, I wasn't aware of Joomla that far back. And was it still Mambo then, or had they? I don't even know when the split was anymore. But
I have no clue.
The Joomla style seems to be very large, multifunctional extensions, where here's an entire solution for a kind of business or something, and then it becomes quite hard to sort of swap out a piece or add another extension if somebody's decided to do it in a different way. And I like the systems like TYPO3 that provide standardized granular extension opportunities.
Yeah.
What do you remember about TYPO3 3? And would you compare it to TYPO3 10 now?
No, of course there are comparisons to be made, because there are things that didn't change. But one of the first things I remember back then, and some things that I still value, is the page tree, the page module. It's actually pretty simple, straightforward, but it's something you know from other structures like file structures.
Yep.
So you can build your navigation in a logic way that you can see in your backend that represent directly more or less in the front end. Of course, you can make a hidden menu and all these kind of things, but that was one of the things that I found the easiest to start with. And the fact that I could change layouts so that not every page had the same layout without rewriting my complete design. Back then, Templavoila was the big thing, and it was so like click and point to map your HTML. So that was back then. It was quite easy to get started. Of course, TYPO3 still get a lot of complaints about the hurdle to get started with TYPO3 is not that easy, but it also comes to your perspective on how you see things, because I'm one kind of person. I learn in one way. You're a different kind of person. You probably learn in a different way. And I totally accept the premise that TYPO3 could be difficult for a lot of people as a starter. Luckily, the community is on that and trying to improve that, so we can have more people joining, also with less technical skills. Or different technical skills. It doesn't need to be less technical skills. It can just be different technical skills. I found it quite easy to get started back then.
Yeah, the page tree concept is one of the strong differentiators for me, and it looks very simple, and it has quite a lot to it that I think is really valuable for real projects in the world. It seems to me that TYPO3 is very, very good for very large information heavy sites. So that's a really typical corporate use case. I need to put out a lot of information and I need to keep track of it. And if I have a visual hierarchy set up for me, just mentally like a file system, that's easier to take care of. And I find it incredibly convenient that I can build a page structure and start to put in content. And it doesn't matter that my front end system is not set up or that it doesn't even exist yet, because the managing content part works. And then it's such a nice set of shortcuts. If you want it to, it'll define your menus for you. It'll define the navigation for you. It'll define multi-page URL structures for you, all in that tree. And as far as I can observe, people who work as content authors and editors, they also recognize that instantly, and it makes it pretty easy for them to jump in and sort of keep track of where they are in their day-to-day work. I really like that. The thing about TYPO3 being complex to approach or with a steep learning curve, I think any system of a given complexity sort of can't be easy by definition, right? But I am involved in several different projects, personally and professionally. And I was thinking about this particular aspect for a long time. And someone on my team was installing TYPO3 a couple of years ago and came across something strange in the installation process. And it's not the usual one that freaks people out, that like a successful installation is when it shows you the error message at the end, right? Which is funny enough. But there's some point in the installation process where, at least at the time, you have to know to reload a page, but there's no instruction to do it. And there's something in the middle there. And we were thinking about filing a bug or trying to refine the process. And I brought it up. With a much more experienced TYPO3 community member than me, and they told me, "Hey, why are you installing this yourself? TYPO3 is a professional system for professionals. You hire someone to help you do TYPO3, right?" So this it's really, really interesting, and that helped me define my vision of who the TYPO3 community is. And I see it as a community of professionals, delivering client work. And then once I recognize that this is professionals doing client work, then it's pretty clear to see that what the core delivers is so much of what you need to do a typical web agency client project. And sure, you can do fancy, crazy stuff, and sure, it's flexible and extensible, but there's this really solid toolkit in the middle to get big information-rich sites out. I find that, that's a really, really strong value proposition. Yeah,
I agree with that. The biggest project I've done so far was the Sony Places Network, which is not that small, but that was a setup with, I think, around 99 languages.
Wow, nice.
But in multi-tree. So when we had the default page, and every time we published a new language, we copied the tree, because of course you cannot have a single page tree with 99 overlays. That would not be possible.
Right.
So, but it was quite good. So every language, for instance, Mexico, of course, had Mexico English and Mexico Spanish. I think. Yeah. And if the same go for Brazil, etc. So the small pages were with overlays, and the rest was single tree or multi-tree, so to speak. But it was quite a big setup. And I remember one time we launched, I think it was 20 languages at one go, and that was quite interesting. Yeah.
It's also pretty impressive that you can have sites that are that big and that complex, and it still remains performant, and the user interface still supports authors and translators and everybody getting their job done in a pretty clear way.
Yeah. It was actually the requirements for the server itself. It ran back then on 6.2. That was the first project I did on 6.2. And it was even, the client was that upfront and upstream that we launched with the release candidate 2.
Ooh.
So it was not even stable yet. But they were really up for continuous integration and improvement, and wanted to be cutting edge. So that was really a huge and cool experience actually. But yeah, we launched it with the 6.2 release candidate 2. But it was the server requirements back then wasn't really a big thing. Of course, the servers are getting faster and stronger and everything. But I think that the entire setup ran on, was it 4 web servers and 2 database servers? It wasn't more than that.
Wow. Nice.
And yeah. And at
would
the
you
end,
say it's would you say it's fair that the performance bottleneck for those installations is less TYPO3, but more the data and the databases?
We for sure saw that the database was an issue, or what to say, was an issue. That if you throw hardware at your database server, you can get an extremely performant setup.
Or I guess a CDN, right? Somewhere.
Yeah. That too. That we had, of course, too. But their hardware, the database queries were fast. We just by replacing our hardware, we managed to cut off, I think it was 45 minutes of our deployment time, because the import of the backup was that much faster. We switched from relatively simple database servers to database servers with their, back then it was 64 gigabytes of memory and 24 CPUs, and it was just like blasting fast. It just
nice.
And that was the standard. It was not even the database server that Sony bought in back then. It was just the standard web servers that they bought back then. So of course, it was also one pretty decent hardware.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was back in 2015 or something like that. Back, so it's not that far ago. But yeah, in 15, I think 2015, that they did this upgrade, and that was really fast. And that proved that the communication with the database was, in our project, the bottleneck.
Yeah. So let me ask you a new question.
Yeah.
How long have you been involved with the crawler extension?
I have been involved since I joined AOE in 2013, but I've been doing the main maintenance since 15, I think. Yeah, the extension is developed originally from Kasper Skorhøj, that also developed TYPO3 together with Daniel Pitchinger from AOE. They had some ideas on cache warm-up and etc. And so it's actually, the first release was done in 2005. So it's not that new extension. Right. So it's not my child, so to speak. At least I didn't give birth to the child, but I'm nurturing it now.
So explain what it does. And then I'm really curious to know about the sort of the workload or the processes that go into taking something that's been in the system sort of forever and keeping it up to date with the rest of the system.
Yeah, we went through, we is the correct word because I got help from outside. Went through a really big rewrite, which wasn't really a rewrite, but more a make it compatible change with their TYPO3 9.5 and 10.4. It started November in 18, I think, and I managed together with other persons to have it released together with the 10.4 TYPO3, so in April this year. And what the crawler does is that it fills your cache, so to speak. It's basically like a search bot. It visits your site. You generate a list of URLs, gets visited, and then what happens on the system is your configuration that decides. So if I visit page A, your page cache for page A will be there. If you have allowed search index on that page, it will be there. If you have PDFs, etc., linked there, they will get indexed, so they get into your search index as well. So cache warm-up and search for people not using Solr is probably the most common use cases for the crawler.
And that's all internal to your installation?
That's all internal to my installation, or to their installation, yeah. And so it's actually from purpose point of view, what it does do is actually really limited, but it has potentials. to develop to more. We have one of the latest features we have added is earlier the crawling was just happening first in, first out. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the way you want your cache to be warmed up, so to speak. So many people solved it by doing, okay, then we have a pre-deployment configuration that takes care of the root page, their contact page, and stuff like that, so that they are at least in the cache. But we have then implemented so that it combines the information from the SEO optimization, because the likelihood that a page that is important to you in your SEO ranking is important to you in your cache is quite likely.
Yeah.
So when the crawler is processing the pages now, they take the one with the highest SEO rankings, or not SEO rankings, but SEO priority. So that the cache gets warm up in their respect to your SEO priorities. Yeah.
Do I have to set that manually, or does it do that automatically?
It does that automatically. And if you don't use the SEO feature in TYPO3, every page has 0.5 as priority, and it will go first in, first out, like it always did. So if you decide to go and say, okay, my homepage has priority 1, my contact 0.9, etc., these two will always be crawled first.
Now, does having my highest priority pages pre-cached then improve my search engine ranking because they'll be more performant when the external crawlers hit them?
I have honestly no clue. I don't know. I have honestly no clue.
But it makes them ready for when visitors are coming, right?
Exactly. They make sure that the one that is priority to you is there at first.
Cool. That's super cool.
Regarding the refactoring, we have seen, or refactoring, making it compatible regarding to the 9 and 10 version, we have seen that are way too much code for the functionality that it provides, that is custom written. So some of their initiative that their TYPO3 core is going through right now, I have to go through with the crawler as well. So to replace self-written components with well-known components from the PHP ecosystem.
Terrific.
And that's something I'm working on a regular basis, so that the core functionality of the crawler will of course be custom, because you cannot outsource everything to other libraries, but I will make sure that only the logic that belongs in the crawler is in the crawler, and the rest is sub-dependencies.
And that ties in with the idea of only doing the interesting work and automating the rest.
A little, yeah.
The other thing from a business perspective, and this comes up when I'm talking with people about open source and TYPO3 and many other things, you want to keep as little liability and as little risk in-house as possible. So if you're maintaining a giant amount of custom code and functionality, you have to maintain the tests, you have to maintain the security, you have to do all of that. And if there are reliable, dependable, well-tested libraries and other sorts of external projects that can do it for you, then spreading that load is a sensible decision, right? I saw that for the latest version of the crawler that you cut 22,000 lines of code out of the code base. Is that roughly right?
Oh, I don't remember. I think that was the update from the one being compatible and not compatible with 9. So yeah, there was a lot of code removed. One of the things we did, we started using Guzzle as an HTTP client instead of using the one we have written ourselves. So that's a huge difference. And
many projects wrote HTTP messaging, all that stuff. It's great that we can get rid of them.
Exactly. And that's the steps I'm going through right now. I had a really nice workshop last week on refactoring with Anna Felina, who is in the PHP world at least really known for that, doing a lot of talks on that. And I had a one-on-one workshop 4-hour with her on how to refactor better.
Wow.
And that is something that I would as a learning first, take into the crawler, but of course use in my everyday work. And that was really interesting. He's really good at that, and I have the advantage by AOE that I have an educational budget, so I used my budget for that this year to do a one-on-one workshop.
She calls herself the legacy archaeologist.
Exactly.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
And that was a really cool workshop, and I learned a lot from it. And there were so many things that you sort of know but don't think about. And when someone from external inspects and audit your code, oh, that's a good idea, that's a good idea, that's a good idea. And I saw how much I could actually do within a few hours, because we actually managed a lot during the workshop itself.
And you were working on the crawler?
We were working on the crawler. She had the crawler, she could do the audit of it, and this, and this, and this. And this is just some of the steps that I'm going through right now, because the smaller and less complex the crawler gets, the easier it gets to replace components, and the easier it gets to develop new features. And even more important, it's get easier to fix bugs, because that happens too. So that's the part I'm going right now. I'm doing, I have dedicated one evening a week for open source work. Most of it is crawler. So every Tuesday night, I lock myself in my room and do at least 4 hours of open source work.
Nice. Although in 2020, there's been a lot of locking yourself in your room time, hasn't there?
That's right. That's right. But I've also done it before that.
Yeah. What is your favorite feature of TYPO3?
That's a really good question. I use TYPO3 as a end user too for my private project, but I use it more like a standard CMS, to be honest. I don't use many advanced features or anything like that. So I actually find it difficult to answer because I think that 99% of what I use TYPO3 for as a content editor, I could do with mostly every CMS that I have tried.
So is it like saying what's your favorite part of your house, and you've lived in your house so long that it's just like how could you say whether it's the tap or the or the doorway?
I don't know if you could put it like that, but it's probably a good analogy, because there are so many things that I take for granted in TYPO3 and don't know how we don't appreciate them because we get used that they're there.
All right, so what is something that everybody should know about TYPO3? What do you tell people if you're doing any of that sort of convincing?
Convincing. I like I like the fact that we get their site handling now and the page regarding the slugs and so that we are not depending on speaking URL module anymore from externally.
Yeah,
that is something I find highly valuable, because it's something I see belongs in a core.
That felt strange to me for a long time. And other systems also didn't have it as a core function out of the box for a long time. But the slug management, making URLs that match, for example, patterns that are good for SEO, right? And titles and URLs and topics lining up. That's important.
Yeah, I find their language handling sometimes difficult, but I find it a really important feature. It also depends on who you pitch it to, what key points, selling points that I will take out, because a small sports club or a football club or something like that, they really just need the basic CMS. They need to see, okay, here you could build the new forms, which is, by the way, also a really great initiative that it's done easier. Here you can do a contact form. So here, this is how you do images with text and etc. So the basics, and most people would be convinced by that if that's what they need. Of course, doing pictures for a project like the Sony PlayStation Network, I didn't do the pitch, but the idea of doing the pitch for them would be more like you have a system that is so modular that you can basically extend it to whatever you need. That would be the pitch. So it really depends on which spectrum you're in. And that's also a reason why it's difficult for me to say what is my most important feature, because it really depends on my perspective, because my most important feature as a developer is different as the most important feature as a user.
And then you also have a hat on as a community member and contributor, and probably a few others as well.
The role I take the most is of the crawler developer. I've been in the TYPO3 org team doing the extensions and TR since 2013 as well, or 12 perhaps. And that's then my second role. Of course, I have my job, but I'm talking about the open source part and not the paid work.
So what do you do? What do you do in the TYPO3 extension repository, the TER?
Actually, today we have a TYPO3 remote sprint. That's also why I could allow myself to schedule it during the normal hours, because I have so many hours after hours today that it would not be a problem. But today I'm working on that their download numbers in the extension repositories get collected from packages as well, so that we have a total downloads number, and not
that's really useful.
And not just how many times it is downloaded from the extension manager, but also from packages.
Wait, so here's a question I have for you. Yeah. You're going to put those two numbers together. Yeah. Do you have any sense right now how many people still install out of the repository with the extension manager, and how many people install with Composer through Packagist? In general?
I don't have in general, but I can give you a number pretty fast.
Not in general, but specifically.
Yeah, exactly. 1 second. Sorry for my loud keyboard.
It's geek cred if you have clicky keys.
But then I can pick out my clicker here, because they are even clickier.
Nice.
You have to have something to decide which keyboard you go for, right? From the crawler perspective, we have 114,000 downloads on Packagist.
Yep.
And on the extension manager, we have 60,000. So roughly double as many on Packagist. And to be honest, Packagist hasn't been out that long compared to the total time that the extension manager was there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a fair comparison to say that it's as 2 or 3 do it over Packagist. I think that the numbers are a little different, because actually I could check it more generally, but don't go too much into clicky details right now. But I think that it's 10%. That's my rough estimate.
10% is which?
It's extension manager still.
Right. Okay, because using Composer, therefore pulling it from Packagist, of course, fits with the development trends and standards and CI/CD that have become so important and widely adopted in the last few years, right?
Yeah, but I also think it depends. Of course, it always depends, but I think it depends on which extension you look at. Because if you take an extension like the blog extension or the news extension, that a lot of smaller websites would need as well, which, let's say a small football club, they will probably not have the same need for caching. Of course, caching is nice, etc. But having the first request taking a little longer and then have it cached instead of having it done automatically is probably not the same need, so to speak. But having a news section or a blog post or whatever could be something that also really small sites could benefit from, which probably could be the case that they don't have the technicals behind them to set up the site. So they could click through the extension manager, install the plugin, configure the basics, set up the template, and done. So it really depends.
They might not use version control. They might not use. They might not do all that fancy stuff.
Yeah. So it really depends on which extension you're looking at, I think. I think that would be at least the most fair way to look at it. Because there are extensions that are more developer prone, on their stations that are more end user prone.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So what's your favorite open source project?
I would have to say TYPO3 because that's the one I use the most. I have used it every day since 2004, I think, in some kind of way. I think if you forget, sometimes you forget some things when you say what's your favorite open source. I think when it comes to it, my favorite open source project or projects are Linux, Apache, PHP, stuff like that, because that's the projects that enables me to do what I love with TYPO3.
Nice.
So if you put it a little more in perspective, without all these kind of things, TYPO3 would never have been there.
For sure. Right. And the web as well. So
exactly. So I have to give a little more credit to that.
So I really care about more people discovering the project and more people trying it out and more people building their careers on it and their companies and their businesses on it. And I feel very strongly that the project is technically in a very strong position and really worth having a look at and very up to date in terms of development standards. And it has a set of capabilities that differentiate it from other legitimate competitors in the market. So different use cases, some of them I think are absolutely fantastic for TYPO3. And I think as of late 2020 that not enough people have heard of it. And I really care about spreading the word beyond Central Europe. So can you talk about TYPO3 not being a German project and talk about I don't know, what does it need, or what are we doing, or what do you want to see so that more people find out about it?
What I would like to see is us to go a little more global, because we are doing a lot of things, let me just put it straight, in Germany. Because it's a lot of people think it's a German thing only, and you have to have a German development agency or developers attached to be able to even use it. And that is some of the strings that I would like to get rid of. And that we can achieve by going more global. I know we have to go small, but we need to get started somehow. Which back then when I joined, there was a conference in USA somewhere.
Wasn't that in Dallas?
I honestly don't remember. I never joined it. I just know there was one. And I'm not saying that we should start with going back to the US again, but we see if you're going to the East, the developers and people behind in Nitzan is doing a lot to try to get TYPO3 forward. What's it called? Daniel in Romania is doing a lot to get it through. I don't remember his last name. I know the first name is Daniel, but he's doing something like that. And he's doing a lot to push it but push it towards Africa to get less developed countries to see the benefit from it. Because of course, open source, you have the big advantage that you have no license cost. You can spend every single penny you have on developing what you needs.
And that might be a feature, or that might be people, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's exciting. I was incredibly excited when whoever it was figured out that there were most of the government websites in Rwanda were running on TYPO3. And that they were outdated, and the association and the community organized 2 or 3 trips of people to go down there and do training and enablement and help them get things up to date and secure, and then move forward using it. And I think that they found another country that's using a bunch of it in Africa. I think that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
And Timek Modolewski's company, Macopedia in Poland, is doing great work too.
Yeah, exactly.
So I kind of think there's a chance to sort of spread it out of Central Europe east on the continent in a very natural way. with those home bases that we have. And the fact that Nitsan has also even run a couple of sprints in India.
Yeah.
The Indian developers that I've met in both the people I've met from Nitsan and the people I've met from other communities are incredibly energetic and incredibly generous with their contribution. I would really love to see a strong base come out of there as well. Would be really exciting.
Yeah, but I think that's some of the things that we should focus on, seeing how we can get a little bigger, small steps by step. So like in kindergarten, when you drew a flower, you started with the center, and then a little what's it called, leaves on it, and then a little more, and then so like your rings in the water, start small. Yeah. And we have an extremely strong base in Germany. That would be unfair to say differently, but we need to get a little further. And some of these initiatives that is going on right now from the people we just talked about is something where we should help. And I could see TYPO3, it shouldn't probably at the first be the core sprints being relocated, so to speak. You cannot contribute necessarily from day one to the core, but let's say we go somewhere and we need some front-end tasks to be done, we need some PHP stuff to be done, then do it in pairing. You don't need to have a person sitting next to you being 100% productive. As long as you can transfer a little knowledge and tinkle a little interest, then
right.
Then you have won something. You don't.
And then also, I guess if you enable someone to have a success experience, then they're going to want to come back as well.
Exactly.
Nice. Exactly. I'm gonna be finding out more about this mentoring program that's going on as it develops. I think that's another great opportunity to help people build some careers and improve their own lives, and then they, some number of them will automatically become champions and advocates.
Yeah, that's something I would like to do myself as well, because there are people on so many levels that need input or just sparring and dialogue. And hey, what does it cost me to take a few hours a week talking to some person that would like some feedback?
Yeah, you have even if you're modest about it, you have really deep, long experience and lots of things that to pass on that would help a lot of other people. So I think it's one of the easiest ways that we can do good in the world as open source practitioners is make sure that somebody else gets excited about it, right?
Yeah.
I am doing a little thing on this podcast called the Suggest a Guest, and I would like to know, in TYPO3, but maybe also something near to TYPO3 or something different, who else should I speak with on this podcast? Who should I invite? Who would you like to get to know better, hear about, show off?
I know him really well personally, so I would probably not be your main listener that day, but I like a lot Thomas Löffler, because he has a lot of things to contribute with. He is the dev lead of the TYPO3 org team and has been it for close to as long as I've been in the team. And he's really good at taking hand on other people and mentoring them and helping them and trying to motivate them. Of course, he's doing a lot of contributions in himself, but he's also enabling a lot of people to contribute. And that's something that I think, in respect to what we just talked about, would be something that people could get motivated about and perhaps interested in, because if they see that we have people like this that is trying to help and is good at enabling people, they will probably see that the hurdle isn't that big. Because you don't need to start to be a full-blown core developer, but if you start to get into TYPO3 by doing small commits to the TYPO3 org website and you see them go live the next day, I'm using an open source project and the main website of that I'm contributing to. That's cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's an incredibly powerful, proven psychological effect. As soon as you feel like you own something, you value it much more. And the idea that you make up, you file a bug report, you submit a patch, you do create a feature, you do something, and then oh, I changed even if it's like, I know I changed the text on that button, or I chose, the frame style or the color or something, but that it's gone live, and that it's part of thousands, tens of thousands of people's of experience, daily experience on the web. It's incredible. It's that contribution drug is a really nice high.
It is. I'm not a front-end developer or any kind, but I started doing CSS for the TYPO3 backend, styling in the backend. That was my first contributions.
There you go.
And then at some point I switched over to the extension repository, and yeah. So it can develop, but the important part is to get people interested, and I think that Thomas is a person that is good at that.
Plus, not giving it away today, but Thomas Löffler has my favorite nickname in the whole world. So I'm going to definitely, it's not a secret or anything, but I love it. So I'm definitely going to bring that up. Well, thank you for your contributions, and thank you for taking the time to talk with me. It's really, really great to get to know you better. Thank you for this and for being part of the community.
Thank you. I honestly didn't know what to expect as you wrote me. I just a bit surprised. Yeah, I actually think we have we met once in person. That was at a conference, TYPO3 conference, where you held a talk and where you did some interviews, doing some media things. But actually talked in person, I think we never did. But I have also suggested you multiple times as a keynote speaker, because I find the way you speak and your enthusiasm, and it's really motivating. And I think
thank you very much.
I think that's what keynotes should be. They should be motivations. So I actually suggested it multiple times when people ask, "Hey, who would you suggest?" And your name is the first coming up most of the times. So yeah, it's not just me giving something; you're also giving a lot, and that's having open source ambassadors is valuable, regardless of if they stand on system A or system B. Ambassadors in general is good. That's by the way also one of the things that I've seen lately, that with their invention, so to speak, of Composer, that their interactivity between the communities are getting bigger, because component from Drupal can be used in TYPO3 and vice versa if they are built correctly.
Right, and security patches can also flow between the projects.
Yeah.
And I think the other equalizer on that front has got to be Symfony, right? People picking up the low-level components to, and then any work you do there is automatically spread around.
Yeah, that's right. That does, but that's something that has gotten way easier with Composer. That wasn't that easy before. So yeah, that's a really big deal breaker, isn't it? Not, but a big game changer. That was the word.
Game changer. Yes, exactly.
I'm still searching for the words, but it will not be better in German or in English or in Danish for that matter. But yeah, that's then when you're so eager to speak, you. Yeah.
Nice. But, speaking of enthusiasm.
Yeah, exactly. I always say that I have two hobbies. One of them I'm fortunate not to live from, and it's unfortunately not golf. So I have my hobby as my job, TYPO3 and development, and there are people, of course, that can say they're that fortunate, but there are also a lot of people who has a job that is just a job.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm really happy about it.
It makes life easier if we can combine making a living with finding satisfaction in what we do. That's a huge privilege, and I've had that a great deal of the time I've been involved in software and open source. Yeah, no, I think we're really lucky. So is golf your job and work is your hobby? Is that how you see it?
No, because then I would not get a paycheck every month. The fun part is back then when I moved to Germany, I played that much golf that my friends was asking me if I moved because of golf or because of my job, because the conditions here is a little better than in the north of Denmark from where I'm from. So it actually would extend my season with about 3 months a year.
The weather conditions.
Yeah. So they actually asked me if it was if that was the reason. But of course, on my level, that's not the reason. That's never the reason. But they thought it was funny to ask it like that. So yeah.
Okay, but you better be careful if you ever move to Italy or somewhere where the weather is really good most of the time. It's going to be really dangerous for you, you know.
But I would love to be in the south. I've always dreamt of being in Spain and just playing golf. But yeah.
You see, exactly what I'm talking about.
But that I could never convince my girlfriend about. So
it's been so great to spend the time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for this conversation, and let's hope that we get live community events again sometime. It would be great to hang out.
I would say so.
Okay. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah.
You have a good one. Have fun at that sprint.
Bye.
Thanks to the TYPO3 Association for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you B13 and Stephanie Kreutzer for our logo. Shout out to the magnifique Patrick Gaumont, TYPO3 developer and musician extraordinaire, for our beautiful theme music. Thanks again to today's guest. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe on the podcast app of your choice and share with your friends and colleagues. If you didn't like it, please share it with your enemies. If you want to suggest a guest for us to have on the podcast, or if you have a question or comment, reach out to us on Twitter at TYPO3Podcast. You can find show notes, links, and more information in our posts on typo3.org. Thanks, as always, for contributing.
And then I'll drive one, and then I'll bring you some on my electric bike. I'll come down to Mainz. See?
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'll just go down. I'll go down the Rhine, and then I'll go right there.
Yeah, I don't know how well the bike tracks are along that road, but yeah.
Oh, biking on the Rhine is fantastic. It is so nice. That's been one of my big things this year. Is so my pandemic activities have been a lot of bike riding and making jams, jellies, and pickles, like therapeutic canning.
I see. I'm also getting more into riding my bike again, and I actually picking up my new bike Monday because I had to order a new. I wanted to, no, had to. I have to do nothing, but I wanted to order a new one, so I'm picking it up Monday, so I am ready for the winter.
Nice.
Because my racing bike is not suitable for winter training.
Sure. I have a sort of a Dutch bike style.
Yeah.
But with a small motor on it to help push it along, and it's just so much fun. I'm gonna replace the battery on it and just keep going.
Was that the one you picked up beer, where the one selling you them said that could only be one beer on them, but you have managed to put two on them?
That's correct. Exactly.
Okay. I was not sure if it was you, but I remember something about it.
Yes, also posted that photo. Yep, yeah. That's me.
Yeah.